Hey, happy noon hour to everybody. I'm Bill Warner with Advertisement, as you probably well know. Happy to be with you here at noon here on Thursday. I'm interviewing me. So I want to talk to you about a very difficult subject. And I'm not sure in my talking to many people about this subject, I'm not sure how many people know how important this subject is of hybrid workplace. and and how important it is to be really good at doing what you're going to have to do in order to bring back people to work in this crazy environment that we're in right now. There's a lot to it. So I wanted to take some time to talk to you about what there is to it and maybe give you some help on how to think about it and how to go about actually creating a successful hybrid workplace. Now, I'm not a foremost expert on it. I'm semi competent. I wouldn't say I'm totally, but I have some thoughts for you that I hope will help. But first, the advertisement. And what I want to encourage you to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. It's the Entredot YouTube channel. And you'll find this video along with a number of others in the Entrepreneurship in Action playlist on our channel. We have about 500 or more followers, people who have subscribed. We'd love to have more. More importantly, we would like your feedback. Ask your questions, make your comments. I'll respond. So, end of advertisement. That's good enough for today. I hope you join us, though, as a subscriber to the Entredot YouTube channel. Let's get into this rather difficult subject. And I believe this starts with your leadership. If you're the owner of a company, you're a top executive in a company, or you're thinking of starting a company, and every level of progression and maturity of a business, whatever you're in, this takes some leadership, some really good, down to earth, solid leadership. And my opinion is that this all comes down to two things. One is health, your health, and the health of the people that are in your company, and the health of the people that interact with your company, like customers and partners, subcontractors, and the like. Health. The second is safety, keeping everyone safe. That's it, health and safety. If you have in your head that what we're about and what we do to have a hybrid workplace become successful is that it deals with these two issues, health and safety. Now, I wish I could tell you there's a prescription for how to do this somewhere on the face of the earth. There isn't one. You are going to invent your own because your people are unique, their needs are unique, the relationships you have with outsiders is unique. You have to come up with what is going to work for your company. So you're not going to go find the one way. You're going to create your way. Really, it's true. It's what is going to work for your company. I'm going to talk more about how you figure that out in a minute. But then finally, in your leadership, I believe this has to be added to, if it's not already there, health and safety is added to the messaging you have around the culture of your company. That becomes an integral part of your ongoing experience that you're going to communicate and share as an integral part of the culture of your business. So you as CEOs and founders and top executives, whatever you are, I urge you to incorporate health and safety as an integral part of your culture and the messaging that goes with it. Okay. With that said, I think the first thing you've got to do is but be current on what the rules and regulations are and find that out from people who really know what they are. Now, I don't think you get this from the news broadcasts that are all over TV today, because they're so politically charged when they're delivered to you that we're not quite sure what the rules and regulations are for us here in, say, Raleigh, North Carolina, or Research Triangle Park, or in some other county, Durham or Orange or Wake or Granville or whatever county where you're in. What are the rules and regulations? Well, they're two different things. First of all, the regulations come out of government agencies and health services agencies, whatever they are for the state of North Carolina, and anything that's added to it or subtracted from it by your county is probably what you ought to go by. And when it comes down to rules, best practices, whatever you want to call them, I suggest you talk to some leading healthcare providers, the ones that are on the ground dealing with this pandemic every day and know the ins and outs and, quite frankly, what the right practices are for how to engage with people. I'm thinking of the big healthcare providers, Wake Med, Rex, Healthcare, UNC, Duke, and the list goes on. I didn't mean to leave somebody out, but I'm talking about the biggies. Not your veterinarian, not your family doctor, but people who are dealing with this issue on a large scale and know the ropes, know what works, know what doesn't work, knows BS from truth. Consult with them. Get advice from people on the ground. National agencies are so generalized that you may be getting the right advice in general, but you really need to get it down to the specific of what goes on in your state. For us, it's North Carolina. And what it takes to be compliant. You want to know, because whatever you do for your company has to comply by these regulations and whatever local rules they are. So be current on them. Be current means find out what they are, first of all, and then stay in touch with the people that you're confiding in for advice, and get updates from them on a frequent basis. Situations change weekly. So staying current with what's going on is pretty darn important. Then, now that you kind of know stuff about what compliancy means, I think the next thing you want to do, if you haven't started already, you ought to, is find out what your employees' needs are. This is where all the variety occurs in what you're going to do about this. For every single employee, each one of them has a different health situation going on. They've had it, they've not had it. They've had one shot, they have had two shots. They have had no shots, whatever the case may be. They have immune system deficiencies, whatever else is going on with them that makes this whole pandemic situation more or less dangerous for them. You got to know that. Better, just as important, you got to know what's going on inside their families. What's going on with spouses, with other family members that are living with them, kids, what's going on that is going to determine what involvement they have to have at home to dealing with the health situation that they're in. You got to know this, and you got to stay current with it. Next is what will then come of the work situation that they're comfortable with. You got to literally ask them. You feel comfortable about coming back to work? What are the conditions under which you can come back to work and work in an office building? What are your preferences for remote working? This is where hybrid comes in. Remote work versus work in a building somewhere and hanging around people inside that building. So you got to know their sensitivities about it. So know what's going on with their family, know what's going on with them, and what is their level of comfort with the form of work that they're going to be able to engage in. When it comes to their kids, they have kids, Those kids are either going to school or not going to school. If they're going to school, things could be better. But if they're not going to school, that means they're at home. Somebody's got to take care of them. That's going to drive some employees right back home certain days of the week that the kids have to be at home. See how complicated this gets? These are things you must know before you make big decisions about when you're going to come back to work, what days you're going to be back at work, and on and on and on. Because you're dealing with family situations that are probably more important than their job, at least in their minds. You got to know this. Okay. Well, how the heck do you know it? You interview them one by one by people who are sensitive to all this and are going to ask a series of questions, write down the answers, and remember what their needs are. Interview, interview, interview. That's how you deal with this. It's upfront and personal. And it's done by the leaders of the company in some sort of team effort, including the founders and the CEOs and presidents of these businesses. So, interview. Okay, it doesn't end there though. Your company is dealing with customers and partners as well. Guess what? You probably not the same exact questions and with the same intensity, but you have to know the preferences of the people you're doing business with in the manner you're going to do business with them. It all comes down to how you're going to meet with them. Are you going to allow them in your building? Are they going to allow you in theirs? What are the rules for their companies? For if you were to visit them, what are their preferences for remote online meetings versus face-to-face? You're going to have some preferences for that. So certain kinds of meetings, I think you're already finding work just fine over Zoom or any one of the other platforms. Zoom seems to be the biggie. So know also by interview the preferences of your customers and partners. It's going to have a lot to do with how you're going to direct your employees to deal with customers and partners. You're going to do it the way they want. Okay. See how complicated this gets? Now, once you understand all that, many days later, after all these interviews, you create a plan taking into account all of what you learn about employees, customers, and partners and their preferences. So you're going to figure out some form of schedule by which work is done at home versus work that's done in your building at work. And there's no pat answer. There's some form of work at home, work at home, which day of the week, what hours of the day, things like that, that you're going to have to come up with that meets the needs of all of these people. I think you're going to find that making that decision is tough. And you're going to maybe run into, like a brick wall, some of the preferences of some of your people. You're going to come down to perhaps some tough choices that you're going to have to make that may work against the satisfaction of some of your employees. These are tough calls. You're going to have to make them. But the utilization of your space, how meetings are conducted, and all of the process and the procedures that employees are going to have to adhere to when they come into the building. Are you going to test them? Take their temperature before they walk in the building? You're going to put plexiglass up between desks. What are you going to do to make this a safe place? And what are the procedures that people have to go to with respect to distancing and masking and not masking, and their general health? That is, take the temperature thing I just already talked about. All of this has to be part of a plan for how people come back to work at whatever times you're going to determine that they come into work, or what kinds of meetings, and when they come in, how they act and how they relate to each other. You have to write all this down. So you see where I am? We found out the rules. We found out the the preferences of all the employees, partners, and now we're going to have to devise a plan that works for us, our company. It's a unique plan. It's one that works for you, not everybody else. They may, your plan may be helpful to others, is what you've learned, but it's yours. So if you're having difficulty with this, there are some experts, consultants that could help guide you through this process of how you figure all of this out. Get the help you might need. Let Google be your friend and do some searching for consultants on how to deal with these kinds of issues, putting a plan together for hybrid workplace success. See what you get. Okay, next is, now you got this plan, guess what you're going to do? You're going to tell your employees about it. You're going to communicate it. And you're going to do it in kind of a special way. You're going to be open. You're going to be transparent. There's no hidden agendas here. You're going to be straightforward, honest with employees about what you have found out about preferences, why you're doing what you're doing, and why this plan makes sense for the company. You're going to throw in another little, piece of seasoning here, and that's empathy. So I just used the word tell when I probably should have said communicate, but you're going to do it in an empathetic way. So you understand the pain that your employees understand the pain. They don't know that you understand the pain they're going through. I spit that out rather sloppily there. I think you get the point. And as you explain this and you have Q&A period, you're going to listen to what they're asking, and you're going to listen empathetically. That you show you care for the concern that they have about all of this. And you're going to show that you're aware of their needs because you have talked to them all, or you have had people that have talked to them all. They know you've done this. But when it comes down to it, your answers are firm, to the point. Don't mince and bloviate on answers to very straightforward questions. Some answers may be tough for them to take, but they're your answers. So there's no equivocating in this. As soon as you start equivocating, which is what you see on the news today, it's this or that, or in this situation, that situation, it's a bunch of mush. You're going to have to be firm and straightforward because you're now dealing with the health and safety of your people. They too are going to have to make decisions for themselves. Do they want to work here? They're going to be thinking about that. And you're going to lay out what it takes to work here. This is the way you've decided it's going to be. At the same time, you're open and listening and responding in a straightforward way with empathy. Remember that. It's a new word. It's a new word maybe in your vocabulary. I suggest you use it. Be empathetic. Then, at the same time you're communicating, you're executing the plan that you just got through talking to them about. This involves training training people in new roles, training people on how to conduct themselves in meetings, what kind of mask to use, and how to enter the building. Training. People's roles and responsibilities inside the company are being modified because the manner in which they do work and how they do work and where they do work is changing. You're going to probably have metrics for perhaps the efficiency of what you now thrust upon them. You want to get feedback and how this is going. So you'll have some form of reporting, perhaps done by survey, but done by further communication, asking questions. How's it going with you, Susie, or Sam, or whoever you're going to be talking to? Never, all said and done, though, in the execution of this, you're going to enforce the policies and procedures that you have communicated to them. There's no doubt about that. Enforcement means reminding them what the rules are for the way we're going back to work. Enforcement also means that, that you may sometimes have to make some tough calls in counseling people on their behavior and the manner in which they're conducting themselves in meetings and the way they're conducting themselves in coming back to work. So you execute. Then you'll have also some way to monitor how this is doing. Some articles I've read on this suggest a special team. I don't mean kind of the, a side team that's not related at all to this and is independent, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about some group of people designated as the people that are really going to have their ear to the floor in terms of what's going on, and listen to the feedback and listen for the feedback they're getting from employees and management on how this is going. And when they see a significant problem, they investigate what's going on. And, maybe your plan wasn't so hot after all, and maybe you need to make some changes to it. So I urge you to have a process for monitoring and a process for investigating and recommending changes to the policies and procedures that you've put in place so that it takes action. But I think you make this kind of thing an integral part of the management and leadership team. And as you do this, you reward people for really great behavior and continue to encourage it. So it's not all about, punitive kind of things. You want to see that this is working and say, yay, this is working. Let me tell you some examples of how this is working. And you identify best practices and you have ways to share it out with people. See, this is kind of complicated, isn't it? There's more to it than you thought there was. This is not simply, hey, we're going to go back to work now. Oh, isn't this wonderful? Well, it's a little bit more complicated. So there you have it. This takes leadership. And you've got to understand the needs of your people, put a plan in place, communicate it, execute with excellence, monitor what's going on. And when things are going right, or maybe not so right, you take action. That's it. So I'd be glad to take your questions. I see I got a couple here. So this first one is, I covered it a little bit, is where do I go for help or advice, if you will? Who do I talk to get straight answers is kind of what this person is saying. Hey, look, that's a tough one. I urge you, don't get it from the news media because it's too politically charged, quite frankly. I'm not going to name any channels not to listen to or to listen to. But go to the authorities in your county and at the state level and get advice from them. Go to the healthcare professionals in the county and state administration, the health department. Those are the people that gave us the shots in Wake County, along with a whole bunch of others. That's where I got my shot. But ask for their advice. These are people that know the answers to the questions you're going to ask. And finally, go to the healthcare professionals that you rely on, whether you're in the Duke system or the UNC system, Wake Med system, whatever system you're in, listen to them. I think you're going to get the best advice there. That's the best I can do. There's no particular person or individual that knows it all, because really it's going to come down to you making some judgments after all of these interviews you do. So that's a really good question. Well, here's a question. What if employees don't comply? Wow. Well, I think what you do is you talk to them. Somebody who's not in compliance is fighting back for some reason. You got to find out what's going on with the person. Listen, ask and listen. I think 8 or 9 times out of 10, you're going to find, oh, I didn't understand. Oh, I see. Oh, I could do it this way. And whatever. Much of it's going to come from their lack of understanding of this plan you put in place and the rationale for it. So that 1 time out of 10 that you've got somebody who's just obstinate and it says, I don't agree with this, I'm not going to do that. Well, okay, maybe you need to find somewhere else to work. It may come down to that. I hope not. But when I talked about you had to be firm about this, it's, yeah, this is your way or the highway. I don't think you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be that arrogant about this whole thing. You're going to see a lot of frustration, as you're already seeing, a lot of confusion, a lot of fear. That's where you put that empathy hat on that I was talking about earlier. Listen, listen, listen. See where they're coming from. I'll bet you a whole bunch of times out of 10 or 100, you're going to settle them down, and by communicating with the facts of the matter and why, and the rationale for why you're doing things. That's my answer to that question. Uh, I think this person is a little angry. He says, safety, what is that? What do you mean by safety? Well, I mean, you're in an environment where you're not likely to experience a breach whereby you get the coronavirus. Hopefully you've had your shots. So you're doing, what I think it means is that you're doing things to keep yourself safe, and you're keeping other people safe from your potential for carrying the disease to them. So safety is not only about you, it's safety is what are you doing to keep others safe? That's the distancing stuff and the masking stuff and the plexiglass stuff and not shaking hands and coughing into your elbow and, all those kinds of things where you're cognizant of your responsibility to keep yourself safe from this virus, and you're not going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to give this to others. I think that's the answer to that question. Okay, here, like I said this now twice. Don't listen to the news. The question here is, I'm confused by the news, they said. Well, I am too. I have stopped listening to the news. I used to watch a lot of this stuff. I can't stand looking at it anymore. I shut it off. I read articles. I read articles by consulting firms that do studies on this subject. I try to learn from that. I try to follow my own advice. Go to people that are in the midst of this situation and have to actually make real decisions on our health and our safety. I suggest you do the same. There are plenty of consulting firms. McKinsey comes to mind. I read a lot of that. Forbes magazine has great articles on all of this. I put them in my posts almost every day because they seem to have good, solid advice, and they're not crazy political people giving it. So I'm sorry. I'm being somewhat political minded here. I'm just as political minded as anyone, but in this subject, I want to talk to some people who know what the heck they're talking about in real terms, with facts that make sense, facts that add up to something that would lead to an action I want to take. That's it for the questions. Thanks for them. Appreciate it. I'm going to close off now. I hope this was helpful, but get solid advice in taking the actions you need to take to have your company be healthy and safe. That's what it's all about. I'm Bill Warner with Advertisement. Have a great day.